Reassembly of these is just about as straightforward as disassembly. What you want to do is to make sure that you have orientation proper. Since I am right-handed, I will go ahead and these little protrusions up, hold on to those. First you want to slide on the number, this little number piece. 8 goes to the inside, slide it to where it stops, don't force it. Put your cap on, put the screw in. That's pretty much it. Whatever you do, do not try to over tighten these screws. They strip out, they'll break the little drawbar knobs very easily. So you just want to get them to where they're snug, give them a tiny little bit, and that's it. Those are ready to go back in the organ. If you do happen to screw one of these things on too tight and crack something, or if you have one that's already cracked, it's really fairly simple to repair. Typically the screws are long enough to grab a hold of whatever it is, this little boss in here. What I do is inside here I will fill this cavity with epoxy. After the epoxy cures, you can put the screw back in and everything will be just fine. Just make sure when you put the epoxy in that you don't fill it too much. The surface that this drawbar rests against has to be flat, okay? So don't fill this cap up further than this surface with epoxy. Otherwise you'll end up not being able to seat the cap onto the drawbar rod. Okay, we're going to reassemble the drawbars. Kind of grease you use is depending upon what you got. Lubricate plate, a good lithium grease. I don't know how well petroleum jelly would work, never tried it. I'm using a 100% silicone lubricant here. The only places that you really need to apply it is this area right here and this area right here on the bottom. Okay? All it takes is a very, very thin film. Anything more than that is pretty much wasted. You also want to put on the edges of the drawbar on top, right here, a little bit. That's pretty much it. That's the only place that you need to lubricate the thing. Slide her in very carefully. Now you're going to want to pull the corresponding drawbar contact out and mate them. Want to make sure that these little pins, the little protrusions in the drawbar, mate with the little holes in the drawbar contact. Next thing you're going to want to do is apply the keeper. I found it easier to put the screw in the keeper like that and hold it with the screwdriver. My pudgy little fingers won't let me put that screw in there very easily. Go ahead and give it a couple of turns to get it started. Now you're going to want to wiggle the keeper to make sure that the holes and those pins are firmly engaged. Now you just kind of snug it down. Don't tighten it yet. Just go ahead and snug it down. Oh baby, that is one smooth feeling drawbar right there. What you're going to want to do is wait to tighten all those screws until you get them done, or go ahead and just pull your drawbar out and tighten them all the way. It's whatever is up to you. I like to do them all at once just to make sure that I didn't forget one. So if I pull them all out and then go down the row and snug them up, I know that I would not have forgotten one somewhere along the way. Hey, something else that you might want to do while you got it apart, since you already polished up this part of the console, is go ahead and put a coat of polish on this part right here. It's going to be a whole lot easier to get this done when it's up like this before you put it back down. So if I were you, I'd go ahead in this lower part of the switch panel here, go ahead and give it a good coat of wax. You'll thank yourself in the long run. While I'm putting my wax on here, I just want to make sure that you understand this writing up here that's been silk screened on there. That can be taken off fairly easily if you use some kind of rubbing compound or something like that that's too harsh. So don't use anything more harsh than a cleaner wax, or just a pure carnauba wax or something like that would probably be the best thing. Okay, now that we got that all shined up, we're going to put this component back. Now remember what we said about these 3 little hooks, actually 4 little hooks. This one here is especially troublesome because it's kind of underneath that circuit board. You got to just be careful that you put it down and don't scratch the paint. That one's in, that one's in, that one's in. 2, 3, 4, they're all in. And then it's a matter of just getting the bunches of wires out of the way, and she's going to sit right back down flat. That's it. She's all locked in place. Next thing we want to do is put the 4 screws back in here. I would recommend that when you put the screws in, that you leave them loose. Put these 4 screws in and leave them loose until you get the back on. These end plates have a lot of play in them, and what will happen is if you tighten the screws down, the holes on the back may or may not line up. So if you leave them loose, get the back plate on, then you can tighten everything down at the last. Got my black wire back in place. Got the little circuit board screwed back in place. Clamps are where they should be. Now it's time to put this back. Pretty much just a simple matter of hanging it there. It'll stay there by itself until you can get the screws done. Again, I suggest strongly that you go ahead and put a couple of screws in loosely, leave them loose, get all your screws in, and then turn around and tighten them all. It'll save you a lot of hassle. We're pretty much home free now. I put the percussion amp back in. Again, it was easier if you put all the screws in loosely. Last thing, or second to the last thing rather, is this cover. What you want to do is kind of make sure that you got your screw holes kind of lined up, because it's kind of difficult to shift once these spring clips have taken hold. This is probably the trickiest part of the whole operation right here, is getting these silly things back in place. But if you start with one end and work down, usually goes pretty good. There you have it. It's a matter of sliding it in there. Put the covers on the back, put the top on. I won't bore you with those minor details, but that's pretty much it. Well, here she is. Drawbars feel smooth. There you have it. Just saved yourself a ton of money.